It is my belief that SWIFT chooses quant over all else for banking. Now, a disclaimer. We know about Chainlink's role with SWIFT. We know about, obviously, Linea. Check out Jesse's Floodbuster video that puts that to rest. But in this comprehensive deep dive breakdown, I will show some key research with you in regard to how quant will be the prominent one, especially when it comes to the European Central Bank's role moving forward. I'll also mix in some Ripple with XRP, and even some Stellar to pound it home even that much more. So consider smashing that like. I think I'm going to earn it on this one. Let's get right into it. First, let's explain some things that have recently happened with the Quant network outside of X. Yes, even with LinkedIn. So pull this up. I want you guys to understand that when we get into the publications, they all make sense. For one, it's this right here. Quant network 3 days ago, 4 actually, says that their founder and CEO, Gilbert Verdian, explains Quant's role in the UK tokenized sterling deposits initiative and why it represents a significant milestone in financial infrastructure, creating the following. Number one, a unified token standard for tokenized deposits across all participating banks. That's in the thumbnail why you saw all the banks. Number two, seamless orchestration and interoperability between banking systems. And also programmable money infrastructure powered by the same technology driving Quant's proprietary PayScript. If you're brand new to my channel, check out my deep dive video that will appear at the very end screen card that will explain more about Quant PayScript, because PayScript in itself does not compete with SWIFT. In fact, it complements that system. So, take it further into this, you'll also see here that the PayScript engine also incorporates, obviously, overledger technologies. Watch Gilbert Verdian's full explanation. We're going to do just that. This is right about 1 minute and 12 seconds, and we'll jump right back here shortly. Here we go.
GBTD is tokenized sterling deposits, and it's the UK's answer to tokenizing commercial bank money as an industry. Leading high street banks from the UK, such as Lloyds, Santander, HSBC, Barclays, NatWest, and Nationwide, coming together to create the central infrastructure and the bank-side infrastructure for tokenized deposits. The key of this project is to create a token standard for all banks to use for tokenized deposits, to create orchestration and interoperability between all the systems within the banks as well as within the infrastructure, and programmability to be able to issue tokenized deposits, orchestrate complex workflows using a programming language and a programming engine called PayScript.
Decent Wallet has a Black Friday sale. You can get up to 40% off, and this runs from November 20th to December 3rd. Take advantage of this. This is the most bang for your buck. This is the biggest sale of the year, and as you see here, the wallet that has it all, security and simplicity, the best deal, Decent Biometric Wallet. The 2X package is literally 40% off, and if you look at it, that's down from $318 all the way down to $189, which brings it at $94.5 each. That's a huge, huge savings. If you choose to get one, that has gone down significantly from $159 to $109. But again, the 2X package is the best bang for your buck. You'll also get free shipping. Pick you up a Decent Wallet today. Secure your assets. If you don't have them stored in a wallet and sitting on exchange, then you're at risk. So pick you one up today. Thank you. All right, taking it further into this, I want you guys to see this as well. This is from the official Quant Fusion Layer 2.5 account on X. Why Rollup architecture is basically greater than traditional bridges. Fusion uses rollups instead of bridges for superior security. How so? For one, bridges means the custodial model trusted requires single point of failure. With rollups, on the other hand, non-custodial infrastructure only operators. Key security feature, well, users can always withdraw tokens back to a layer 1 by posting proof of ownership. No permission from rollup operator needed. Rollup operators equal infrastructure providers, not custodians of your assets. This eliminates the $2 billion plus in bridge hacks we see, of course, in crypto. All right, so they just posted this the other day. I'm going to share it with everybody out there, and I think it's crucial that we get more into this, and that's where we bring in the next part of the outline. Quant itself on X also chimed in. You see here where they state that, did you know over a third of businesses face potential closure without access to vital funding? Yet traditional credit forces rigid monthly repayments regardless of cash flow is a reality. With Quant Flow, businesses can automate repayments based on actual performance. For example, contribute 10% of revenue over £1,000 capped at £5,000. And income dips, contributions pause automatically. It says learn how QuantFlow enables businesses to automate and personalize their loan repayment strategies. Well, like it also says, with programmable payments, credit becomes more than just a funding mechanism, becomes a lever for financial agility. Some of this stuff scares people, and I can't blame them. But getting more into this, I want you guys to see this other key thing, and I want to give a big shout out to this guy. You should follow him. Probably one of the best I've seen when it comes to visuals and some of his technical analysis and so on. So if you're not following Knowledge Up Only, please do so. Shout out to Tokenizer. He showcased him recently with people to follow, especially when it comes to QNT. So I couldn't agree more. Thank you, sir, so much for your hard work. You're killing it with the coverage. Keep doing what you're doing. He says, I cannot make it more obvious than this. This is the no-brainer. There's nothing else even close to achieving this. There hasn't even been a competitor that has come up with a similar design. Overledger is built and tested in regulated financial markets. It is production grade and will be deploying Fusion mainnet soon. These prices are a gift. I mean, what is he really referring to? Well, if you think about it, we talked about this before, even in the X Spaces, did a collaboration, whether it's with Jesse, Channing, you name it, that Quant with this new product or slew of new products they have, like Overledger Fusion 2.5, there is no real competitor with that. There is no 2.5 out there that basically competes with Quant. So are they monopolizing the market? Well, they have some really original products, like even PayScript doesn't compete with, obviously, specifically, SWIFT, right? Again, complementing that messaging standard. But again, I want to show you guys some of the visuals here. This is really, really cool. So he does an excellent, excellent job with this. And I do agree, these prices are a gift. People don't look at it that way right now. A lot of people are, let's face it, upset because the prices aren't, you know, to the moon and beyond. But I think, if anything, I'm still going to keep covering QNT because I see the future, right? So it says here, basically, as I blow this up even that much more, you see here Quant Fusion, like it says, layer 2.5 architecture, universal interoperability, and regulated liquidity. In my opinion, this visual pounds home a lot of what Jesse of Apex Insights, Crypto Insights was talking about. But you see here private institutional ledgers, you see R3 Quarter, Hyperledger Fabric, Quorum. Then you see public blockchains like Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP Ledger, crypto proofs, no bridges, kicking it down to Fusion, multi-ledger, rollup, and execution environment. And look what it says here. Overledger, operating system driven. Again, like Microsoft, but with blockchain. And people forget about that or don't even know about that. And that is so important to still point that out. Point out the obvious, right? Tokenized assets, off-chain state aggregation, smart tuples on this. Universal liquidity pool. Who would stand out the most when it comes to, let's face it, bringing liquidity? Well, on-demand liquidity through XRP. And you see how that funnels into Fusion with universal liquidity access is so important. We talk about real-time gross settlement systems, RTGS, what would be final settlement. And basically, for private settlement, you have R3. And when we get to the part about R3, you will see a final connector about a recent development about R3 and even XRP. Again, even pounding home what Jesse was talking about. It's not just with XDC, right? It's the whole thing of, yes, R3 was given quite a bit of XRP years ago, and it's not like they just gave it to him for free for no reason. I would agree with Jesse on that. If you haven't seen some of our deep dive videos, go to the video section, click on that, and learn a thing or two, because this stuff is important. Bottom part, Quant's unified layer 2.5 approach eliminates bridges, reduces complexity, enables regulated universal liquidity. The competitor architectures, so many people point out so many times, the whole idea that, oh, this project, it has interoperability, that project has interoperability, but do they have it to the scale that Quant Network has? In my opinion, it's basically no. We see Polkadot, we see Cosmos. I do feel as though Cosmos is a solid project, always have. I do feel though that's a very slept on, but they even point out here, right, that you see the whole thing, that it does require specific protocol substrate, for example, the IBC. You do see here, for example, the parachain zones. You do see the relay chain hub. And on the right side, you see force standards, no native external ledgers, for example, Bitcoin. Below that, people will reference, well, what about Chainlink? They're king of oracles. Are you going to cite that? Are you going to even reference it? Or are you just going to dance around the subject? No. I love how this guy does an excellent job of pointing that out. You see here specifically, you have a blockchain, for example, it's Ethereum. You need a lock with that, like a wrapped Ethereum. You need an escrow smart contract. You kick it over to Chainlink, Oracle, and Relayers, which is fine. And then you kick it over to things like Avalanche. But it needs a mint wrapped token. And when you get to the final stage of that mint basically wrapped token with ETH, well, there's a big fat X right there. And like it says, wrapped assets bridge vulnerability. some people really love wrap tokens. It is what it is. But, those wrap tokens supposed to represent the value, but they do represent some risk with that. This other one, let me shrink that down just a tad bit. Again, you see here the generic layer zeros. We know that Polkadot's basically layer zero. You have layer one bridges and square problems. And that problem in itself, we're going to jump down into that. You have Ethereum, you have Solana. And like it says here, you have basically fragmented liquidity. How many times did you see Gilbert Verdian address some of these issues and saying, basically, we need to smash down the wall gardens, we need full interoperability, and if anything, can't have silos where things aren't talking to each other like how it was basically before everything took off in the 90s and whatnot, right? This last part I want to jump into is this next page. And as I pull this one up, this one's a really, really great visual. Again, I don't think you guys have ever seen these types of visuals. I haven't seen anybody else share it in a video. So again, get used to me sharing this guy. I think he's absolutely awesome. And you see here, security and sovereignty architecture comparison. The competitor model, I've been criticized so many times in the past by the guy who does some kind of ringing of, never mind. Anyway, forget him. God bless him. But anyway, competitor model, intermediary consensus, centralized security dependency, right? So again, we're talking about competitors. Intermediary consensus layer, relay chain. You see how it all comes together. Transactions validated there. Shared security model, single point of failure control. But basically, that's their model. And sovereignty is in fact sacrificed. Centralized security bottlenecks. Can't have bottlenecks moving forward when it comes to truly scaling, right? Sovereignty is still sacrificed. And again, with multiple chains. Bottom part says visualizing the difference. Let's read that for a second. Introducing a new central consensus layer that sovereign chains must trust. Quant's Overledger acts as a non-validating operating system, right? Because literally by definition, Overledger is a blockchain operating system. It is literally the standard for building on blockchain as defined by ISO TC 307. Top right, you see Quant model, Overledger operating system, hyper decentralized sovereignty through things like obviously literally the Hyperledger. And Overledger operating system, I love this visual, literally shows kind of like its name implies, something that would sit over everything, hence the Overledger, API gateway and orchestration layer, no consensus. And like you see here, direct chain logic, sovereign validation, decentralized security systems, hyper decentralized security. So again, hyper decentralized security compared to centralized security bottlenecks where sovereignty is sacrificed. Full sovereignty is preserved. If anything, think about it. What about it being quantum resistant? Yeah, that is going to be the biggest whopper of them all moving forward, is it not? True. Taking it more into this, I want to pull up this as well. And this is also a good one to reference. Shout out to brother in space, Smoke. He stated just the other day, Quant CEO Gilbert Verdian shares document revealing Ripple/Stellar's integration with ISO 222 interoperability framework. Watch closely, and even cites MineCrypto. Shout out to MineCrypto. We're going to play this. There's no sound, but watch this for a second, because Gilbert says when you establish TC 307, as in the Quant Network Standard, to develop ISO standards for blockchain in 2016, basing it on ISO 222 for mainstream adoption by financial institutions, you have built everything since then with ISO 222. And it says remit. If you're new to this, that's Quant's old name before they changed it to Quant Network. MyCrypto says, incredible to see the vision, ISO TC 37, your leadership with Overledger 307, upcoming interoperability standard feels timely with Swift's linear rollout. Curious how do you see TC 307 balancing public versus private blockchain needs as adoption scales? Well, he didn't respond to that, but that's okay. But people are wondering about some of these things. And with that said, I'm going to play this. So watch this. Smoke gets into all the juicy parts of this, which I think is really, really good. And we see here, basically the highlight from Gilbert Verdian. You see here specifically where he highlights proposal for a new field of technical activity. And I'll show you a little bit more from this. He zooms on ISO. He zooms on the whole thing of July 14, 2016. And again, that proposal at the time was massive. But again, a lot of these things kind of slip under the radar. I shared this document as well. He's going to zoom in a little bit more on this. And you see plain as day, you have the, at the time was called Remit, renamed obviously to Overledger. But basically that interoperability with an engine that would kick it over to Bitcoin, Stellar, and Ripple. And that is crucial, especially to see those specifically be highlighted, because again, leveraging all this, and boom, you see SWIFT. So all this is there, and it's all orchestrated, and it's all interoperable, and that's important to highlight some of these existing standards, like Gilbert Verdian just basically highlighted there. Now, taking you further into this, here's the actual PDF that has been referenced. This is from ISO TSP 258, Blockchain and Electronic Distributed Ledger Technologies. Again, Smoke was highlighting from Gilbert Verdian, but I just want to highlight these two key things. So for one, It's all about those existing standards, right? Gilbert Verdian realized this many, many years ago. Leveraging existing work, a proposed approach can be similar to the SWIFT ISO 222 standard, which defines the fields and controls within messages and translations or transactions, between entities, thus allowing interoperability. Another thing that should be mentioned here that most aren't for whatever reason is like where it says here in the orchestration, right? Like it says, scope of the standard financial networks on the right here, where that cloud is, to SWIFT, to the bank, payment platforms. I mean, obviously, payment platforms, think about that, right? The engines and so on. But below it says International Payment Framework, the IPF. And on the bottom part says, for example, Nacha. And we know that Nacha is a key partner with who? Stronghold SHX. That is something I definitely didn't want to miss, even though this is not a Stronghold video. That is so major to see that even in the orchestration from TC307 through the document, literally from Gilbert Verdian. Don't ever sleep on that. All right, taking into another key thing I want to point out for everybody here. What is the European Central Bank's role in regard to it?
After these messages, we'll be right back. Yeah.
I have many friends that are earning every single day trading futures on BTCC. It's a simple process, and even if you don't want to learn how to trade, you could follow a trader on the site and let him do the trading for you. And again, I'm not trying to have any of you guys use your hard-earned money to lose anything. You don't know what you're doing? Don't jump into this, but there is money to be made, and don't use your nest egg for leverage trading. Use a separate portfolio. BlackRock has opened up a disclaimer. This is not Larry Fink BlackRock, not that type of BlackRock. As you see here, he has 1471 out of 1500. His copy trading slots have been full for the longest time. So a few have opened up. So again, a call to action with him. He's up about 216%. And this is the lead trader's 30-day profit and loss ratio. On top of that, he has a win rate of 95.31%, which I believe is higher than anybody out there. And he has assets under management of 85,180. So of all the people I've looked into, he has the most to lose. Always follow the guys that have a lot to lose, not somebody who's just trying to come in with $500 or something like that. So check that out if you choose to do so, not financial advice. On top of that, let's take a look into his performance lately. Last 7 days, he's been crushing it. He's at 100%. And on top of that, as you also see here, we see that he is a professional trader, like he's pointed out. He has been doing trading for the last 3 years. He only takes trades when he is sure to win that. And he, of course, uses stop loss. So again, I would recommend use stop loss for yourself. Don't get too greedy with some of this. If you notice you're 2 or 3x up, uncopy the trader so you can take those profits. If you need a guide on futures trading or any of that stuff, I have a guide on the Patreon, and it will walk you through step by step. On top of that, you do see here his performance lately as of the 16th through the 17th, and he's absolutely crushing it. You see here he has a closing P&L ratio, which means profit and loss, up 632%. Another one, 749%. Another one for 1,438%. Again, if this is not your thing, I totally get it, but I thought I'd point that out. But I suggest learn how to trade. Earn you some extra money on BTCC. It's easy. You don't have to KYC, and you don't have to use a virtual private network VPN. This is a wonderful site. They've been around since 2011. Give them a shot. Also, when you earn that extra money, you can store that on your Decent wallet. What did they have to mention? What did they have to chime in about? Well, don't ever forget that in this PDF from ecb.europa.eu, 2025, as in this year, from Digital Euro Innovation Partners, do we have Quant Network literally listed in the PDF? Boom, we do. Quant Network Europe Limited, right? And that is important to basically recognize that. Don't ever forget that as well, because that is a big, big deal. And more importantly, as I take you further into this, again, for the Quant Network, Quant selected as the pioneer partner in the European Central Bank's Digital Euro project, according to Gilbert Verdian, posted this earlier this year, 2025. We'll go into it a little bit more further. People are still asking some of these questions about the whole thing of Quant Network specifically with the BIS. Been there, done that, building API prototypes for retail CBC ecosystem innovation with Bank of England and the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub. Do you see Quant Network listed? The answer is basically yes. And it's right here, actually, because it's in Appendix 3 of the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub, Project Rosalind, building API prototypes in that PDF from bis.org/PUBL PDF, page 35-36 of this PDF, who is listed as a participant, collaborator, and who's acknowledged. And the vendor team you see plain as day, U.S.T and Quant. Okay, that is very, very crucial to basically recognize that as well. Another thing I want to point out, again, established and pounded in home more, Quant collaborates with Bank for International Settlement and Bank of England on Project Rosalind. We've been there and done that since 2023, but it's not going away. And on top of that, we take over to UK Finance, Well, again, is this all adding up? Yes, tokenized sterling deposits. How so? Well, payments and innovation, delivering tokenized sterling deposits. And what we see here, basically speaking, is that participating firms currently are Barclays, HSBC, Lloyds Banking Group, NatWest, just like Gilbert pointed out, Nationwide, Santander, who is also partnering with Ripple, with support from Quant. Okay, I'm with you, Maximus. I hope so. As I take you more into this, again, the paper trail. Quant Network, September 26, 2025. Quant was in fact selected to deliver infrastructure for UK's tokenized sterling deposits project. Kind of been there and done that on that as well. QuantNet, which was another showcase new product from Quant Network this year, the world's first programmable settlement network revolutionizing banking infrastructure. And then we take it into a little bit more about this. I want to point out some other key things that I think is important, because when we get more into it, we basically know that, how will Ripple with XRP be used with Quant Net? And I looked more into this and I said to myself, well, for numerous reasons, right? And I basically thought, what would be a great way of basically breaking this down? Well, to simplify this, right? Let me come back into the frame. Here's just some of my own notes. I want you guys to understand that it's as simple as this. As we know, Quant launched in, I should say Quant Net launched in earlier this year, 2025. It's referred to as a neutral orchestration layer in itself. And in a nutshell, it allows banks to settle payments and assets across different systems. For example, your traditional banks, your tokenized money systems, stablecoins, blockchains, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, it's in one automated atomic step. We've seen constant references to the Quant Network when it comes to atomic swaps and all these references. But while Ripple with XRP isn't directly built into QuantNet, hear me out on this, it definitely connects easily through Quant's Overledger platform, hence why I showed you that short little video that Smoke put together, as well as the actual document from TC307 that Gilbert Verdian highlighted in regard to ISO 222, the orchestration with SWIFT, and orchestration specifically connecting it to both Ripple, Stellar, and even BTC. That is crucial. In practice, what does it mean? Well, banks using QuantNet can use XRP for fast, cheap bridge currency for cross-border and cross-system payments. We know that XRP provides liquidity, in fact, instant liquidity, hence on-demand liquidity. But it's when all this happens when moving value, hence the internet of value, between different currencies or networks. What will be an example of that? Well, the GBP tokenized deposit, kicking over to XRP through the XRPL, or for example, what's happening recently here, or about to be finalized apparently soon, maybe even by the end of this year, with the EUR stablecoin, which would happen basically in seconds. Everything stays regulated and compliant because QuantNet in itself handles the rules and auditing, especially when it comes to the auditing, right? Because we have Quant authorized, yet another product from the Quant network. The bottom line is this: QuantNet coordinates the settlement. XRP via Ripple can be the high-speed liquidity bridge inside those specific settlements. They work together seamlessly through Overledger, even without an official partnership. And isn't that the point? Think about it. Whether it's Brad Garlinghouse, whether it's David Schwartz, whether it's literally Martin Hargreaves from the Quant Network, or Dr. Luke Riley from the Quant Network, or Thomas Harjano from literally MIT, or heck, even mentioned some of these other guys like Gilbert Verdian saying literally it's not going to matter how it all connects. What matters is that it works and that you can use the technology and it works fast and efficient and so on. Clearly, that's the mission moving forward because these are internet protocols. One will be for the internet of trust, because the trust layer might be the most important one, especially when it comes to the whole topic of crypto. And the other one would be, how does it transact value? Again, Ripple with the internet of value, can you throw Stellar in that mix, as Danelle Dixon was outlining, as far as Stellar even providing a form of internet of value. All right, let's take you over to here. I think this is good as well to establish more of a paper trail of Quant and all the banks. So take you over to this, look at it for yourself. Back in 2021, Quant partnered with LackChain. I've covered it, Chang's covered it, et cetera, et cetera. And again, call to action once again. If you're not following King Channing on YouTube, you are not getting your daily dose of Q&T. He is your go-to channel for daily Q&T coverage. I'm not joking. So for one, I want you guys to see here the whole thing of what we're pointing out here, because LackChain is a global alliance made up of 41 allies from the blockchain environment led by the Innovation Laboratory of the Inter-American Development Bank Group, with the purpose of accelerating the development of blockchain ecosystem in Latin America, Caribbean region. And oh, by the way, at least at that time, the alliance is already supporting public-private partnerships and blockchain-based solutions in a total of 12 countries. They already host 26 projects. It's more now. Online exchange blockchain, 89 nodes, 45 entities running nodes, and more than 20 million blocks. That is nothing to bat an eye at. All right, enter in SIA. Why point them out? Well, SIA partnered with, of course, the Quant Network. And something I want to establish here in regard to this is I want you guys to understand that while SIA did partner with the Quant Network to explore innovative solutions and blockchain interoperability for banks and financial institutions, you're going to see something here that's very eye-opening in regard to what we're talking about specifically, like with SWIFT and R3, et cetera, et cetera. But do not forget, SIA was the leading European high-tech company in the payment services and infrastructure sector. And Quant Network is a UK-based pioneering technology company. Again, signed that partnership agreement to explore blockchain interoperability and creation of agnostic cross-platform applications and services for banks and financial institutions. The first interoperability tests were executed on R3's Corda and private Ethereum platforms. Now watch this. Shout out to Tokenizer. Why point him out? Well, he points out specifically, we already know QNT is attending a Discovery member for Sibos 2025. Reminder, Discovery members are handpicked by who? SWIFT. Yes, SWIFT themselves with a focus on innovation. And then we look at the other exhibitors. These names are by no means coincidences. That's why I'm saying that I truly feel as though that SWIFT chose Quant all over everything else for banking, because at the end of the day, you see how they were handpicked. All right, these names are by no means coincidences. Quant's work, I should say, extensively with each of the industry giants that are also attending Sibos. We've already been there and done that with Sibos. European Central Bank. Quant's been selected as an innovation partner for the digital euro creation. No kidding. We know about Hedera's role. We know about Ripple's role when it comes to the digital euro. But EY was alongside UK Finance and organizing the UK Regulated Liability Network, RLN, which Quant orchestrated interoperability within. Been there, done that. Nexi, which is Quant's overledger's white labeled basically through SIA. Notice how we just cited SIA. Merger with Nexi for SIA Chain / SIA Net. Oracle, been there, done that. Overledger serves as the backbone to Oracle's blockchain and digital asset offerings. With Discovery members being centered around relevant financial innovation, Quant fits this perfectly. But perhaps more importantly, the fintech leaders we have seen Quant working with display it even better. From programmable money, Rails interoperable with legacy and DLT and more, it'll be exciting seeing them take stage with the world of finance watching. And here's Exhibitors, just in case you've never seen this. This is a great visual. I love that Tokenizer, and especially the other guy I just referenced from earlier, excuse me, who was basically knowledge up only, do an excellent job with this stuff. So as we see here, let's blow this up a little bit more. Quant with the Discovery and kicking it down to these exhibitors. European Central Bank, EY, Nexi, Oracle. Again, the connections are so big here. Again, understanding how this all plays a huge role moving forward. These are some of the biggest players, again, on the biggest stage. Taking more into this, I want to establish just a tad bit more. SWIFT doesn't just know about QNT with ISO TC 307, but more importantly, they say, quote, SATP would be a digital asset example of ISO 222 for standard messages. They also mention legal entity identifiers. I've done that before in some outlines, which is LEI. As a solution, this was founded by ISO TC 68 in liaison with ISO TC 307. But this isn't just SWIFT, as in S.W.I.F.T, not Swift Blockchain, I always got to point that out. It's SWIFT Institute, which is actually their independent research arm. Founded in 2012, this institute is focused on researching trends in payments, banking, and financial infrastructure. One of which area they are focusing on is payments and CBDCs, which ties into the focus of this paper around payments or payment tokens for liquidity. Again, back to the very beginning of the outline, this matches up. We can also see that SWIFT recognizes this standards that are essential for interoperability, and in return, not only is SATP here, but LEIs, which directly tie to ISO TC 38, and in return ISO TC 307. That's important. And boom, I've shared this before in the past, but it's cool that he's doing it as well. SWIFT Institute working paper, and look what it says, payment tokens. And again, back to what Tokenizer just mentioned, but there's the proof. And again, I don't want to repeat it, but you see it there. That is really, really crucial in regard to that SWIFT Institute working paper. Look that up for yourself. That is so major. Taking into just a little bit more of this outline, I think we're roughly at least 60% through. I want to establish more about this. Hey, it's quite the deep dive. That's what I do. I won't apologize for it. But Tokenizer is so right. Entities backing QNT with ISO TC 307 are in fact no joke. We are getting backing by evidence, right? Here we've got backing evidence by, I should say, SWIFT, the European Union Commission, NIST, who, by the way, I've shared this before in some deep dives. NIST has been around, I think, since the 80s, 90s at least, and they are also a part of the Quant Network standard of ISO TC 307 according to the documentation. Again, I've done some deep dives on that. You have also the US OFR Treasury from SWIFT and European Union directly contributing as a Class A liaison to United States NIST, participating, again, TC307, just like I mentioned, and the US mirror committees, to the US Office of Financial Research representing the United States for the ISO TC307 and ISO TC68 Liaison Committee. Stop listening to these people that jump into the comments to say that quant has no role in the United States. They have not done their research. And I say that politely, but it's a reality. Reminder that TC68 is the ISO standard for financial services. Also overseeing the whole thing were the creators of the commonly mentioned ISO 222 for financial data messaging. We are seeing DLT intersect with the future of finance and governments in real time. And there's many more backers to come with that, but let's blow this up. And basically everything that he just mentioned is valid. And who is part of the source? Well, believe it or not, as you see in the top left of this pamphlet, comes specifically from who? Comes from SWIFT in that information paper on business standards and emerging technologies. Again, think about how big that is. That is massive, is it not? I think Tokenizer took this with, excuse me, a cell phone. So again, it gets a little blurry. Not my, people say, oh, you got problems with the computer. Not a problem with the computer. My computer is awesome. But it is what it is. All right, so you see here, Swift Standards team also contributes to foundational work, defining common terminology and reference architecture for DLT. Again, under ISO TC 307, again, Swift Labs research. You see how this all comes together. Information technology, NIST, again, part of TC 307. How many more examples do we need? And again, the ECB shaping Europe's digital future. That's also crucial, okay? Here's a little bit more. Maybe get worn out with this, but if you appreciate where quant's really going, I think you want to understand the bigger picture of this. All right. So for one, this picture, interesting, that SIA chain, because remember how we mentioned it? It fit right in the repayment, or I should say payment architecture of SWIFT, GPI, and Ripple with XRP. All right. So let's blow this up for a second. And what is he really referring to? Well, again, when you see the platforms, look at this. This is good. You see, plain as day, SIA. You see some of the IBM, Blue Mix infrastructure, Azure, right? SIA. And look what it says, switch GPI with Ripple. Right. Again, back to what Jesse was talking about in some of his deep dives. Why do you think Swift GPI would be with Ripple? Because Ripple is part of that steering committee. Always has been, apparently always will be. That's also crucial. Rate find from Tokenizer. The other area I want to jump into is, as we know, like Tokenizer points out right here, let me highlight that just a little bit more. As we know, SIA Chain was constructed utilizing Overledger in the Q&T partnership. We see SIA Chain as the only listed one in both infrastructure and applications. This is because they enable multiple applications and utility to develop on the network already. Project Spunta is a perfect example of this, connecting 100 plus Italian banks to different DLT networks of their choice. Obviously, you would have things like Algorand would be in that mix. But not only that, SIA Chain also allows for agnostic interoperability thanks to Overledger. They are able to work in synchronous with SIANet, which is the secure messaging solution that enables access to EBA clearing step 2 platform. In other words, they work with legacy DLT-based solutions without the need for additional bridging. I know I'm reading a lot of this verbatim, but in reality, I saw this all myself earlier, and I said, I don't want to do a summary of this. I don't want people to miss it. There'll be people that appreciate this, and there will be ones that won't, and it is what it is. Look what it says here. Notice how there are other DLTs in the platform, such as Quorum, Ethereum, Hyperledger, and Corda. We know each of these are also utilized and tested during Quant and SIA's time building. This report was basically prepared how? Give me just a second. Sorry, I didn't want to cough into the mic. Nothing against Crypto Hulk, but that's not my style. This report was prepared by PwC and SIA. As we can see, it encompasses more than just that, with an overview architecture of relevant networks and applications. And again, SIA Chain used Overledger to be constructed, and now they made it possible to integrate with traditional payment solutions. And what does it say Swift? It does, like Swift and Ripple. And how so? Again, pulling it back up, you see here where it mentions the governance framework. You see the super nodes on the bottom. And then if we're going to blow this up a little bit more, you're going to see some other key things that are important, because it mentions here in the diagram how we take this all together and, if anything, blow it up a little bit more. So data center SIA, what Tokenizer just mentioned makes sense. You see the Hyperledger nodes, and you see, again, this gateway that makes it all happen. So that's worth sharing. Glad he pointed that out as well. And this might very well be the icing on the cake. Just an hour ago, Swift, look how this adds up. Shout out to you guys that stayed the course with this. As of November 2025, the 22nd of November, ISO 2022 is now the standard for cross-border payment instructions, a major milestone delivered through years of collaboration across the global financial community. Adoption is already strong. Yesterday, 97% of payment instructions were sent in ISO 222. Think about that. 97%. What happens when regulations become a worldwide, like when all crypto is just like worldwide law? My goodness, they're going to turn all this stuff into Bitcoin pizza if you think about it, right? Paper handing it. Legends will be made and people will have regrets, in my opinion. This transition unlocks faster, more efficient payments through richer data. No kidding, because you have 10,000, I think it's basically 10,000 bytes of data compared to the old model, which was very, very limited. Greater automation, operational efficiency, deeper insights, better customer experiences, future ready. Again, future ready. Think about that term. Gilbert Verdian always talked about being future proof. SWIFT has played a central role in building the foundation for this new standard and will continue to support the community to drive adoption, so they say. Again, back to that rich structured data, foundation for the future. And again, enable instant, frictionless, interoperable, and inclusive future. I wonder where he gets those terms. This is Jerome Paynes, I'm pronouncing it right, Chief Operations Officer. And again, this was just reported just like literally like an hour ago. All right, so you may feel as though that is it. It is not. I want to point this out again. Smoke points out that BlackRock and JPMorgan are accumulating ISO 222 compliant protocols. It says read closely. XRP, XLM, HBAR, XDC, QNT, and Algo. Remember I mentioned Algo on a few other previous slides. All ISO compliant protocols. All basically gain traction with central banks. 82% SWIFT transactions expected to integrate ISO 222 standards by 2026. So Smoke posted this November 20th, right? And then going back to what SWIFT just posted, think about it. Smoke basically lowballed it a little bit, which is fine. It's going to be concerned about things. But then now on the 25th, you see 97%. Interesting to see that officially from SWIFT. So apparently old Smoke knows a thing or two. Absolutely. Give him a follow. He deserves your follow. All right. This might be the biggest bombshell that you have seen so far in this outline. So let's basically point that out. This is from Wise. Some of you guys are familiar with Wise. Go to wise.com/US/SWIFT-codes. It says Chase SWIFT code in the United States. The SWIFT/BIC code for Chase is CHASUS33XXX. I wish I could show you some more stuff in regard to Quant and JPMorgan, but it is what it is. But I do think it's inevitable that you will see some things in regard to Quant and JPMorgan. It's JPM coin. I'm just throwing that out there. But anyway, Howard Chase uses different SWIFT bit codes for the different types of banking services offers. Or if you're not sure which one you have, again, contact them. So it says, what's the SWIFT code for Chase? And they kind of break this down, right? Well, when you get into this, it says, why do I need a Chase SWIFT code? If you're making an international transfer to Chase account, or someone is transferring you know, basically cash to your Chase bank account in the United States, you'll be asked for this code. I kind of covered this in the past. But interesting is where they get more into this whole thing of Chase and Wise, right? All right. As I would always point out, boil it, mash it, stick it in stew. Isn't this interesting, as Jesse would always say, isn't this interesting that we see, once again, over ledger integration with Wise? Now, in reality, this is the most I'm allowed to technically share because this is public. I wish I could share some other juicy stuff, but it is what it is. I won't get in trouble. What do you want to automate with Overledger and Wise? As you can see, maybe, I don't know, 300 plus apps in seconds. But again, the orchestration, the whole thing of the smart contracts, how it all comes together, these Wise triggers, no pun intended. But again, integrating the Overledger API with Wise API. And that's important to see this, right? Because Wise, clearly, as we saw here, has a thing with Chase. Right? And if anything, the SWIFT codes. How much more proof do you need at this point? Well, you may feel as though that's it. And here's how we bring it all together from the beginning of the outline. This guy, John Paul Koenig, shout out to him. He is basically a monetary economics, history of money, central banking. You know, he knows all this stuff, right? Financial crime. I mean, if anything, he probably recognizes things like Quant Network. But he says the reason there are fewer Euro transactions going over SWIFT is because Europe's new large value payment system, the T2, added a second access point in addition to SWIFT called SIA. Guys, I know I read a lot of this verbatim, but are you not seeing how I tied everything in there for you? If you have stayed the course in this outline, this is one of the biggest discoveries. In short, Euro payments are increasingly bypassing SWIFT. Now think about what I just said. Are you getting this? I hope you are. Because we know with Quant's pay script, it doesn't compete with SWIFT. It complements SWIFT. But to see SIA with the key partnership with Quant Network, is this not adding up? And what kind of integral role would the Quant Network play moving forward, especially when it comes to the European Central Bank's digital euro? Oh my goodness. All right, watch this. Listen to this. So for one, in short, Euro payments are increasingly bypassing SWIFT. And if anything, this was from a while ago, but again, SIA, okay? And again, I was taken basically 2024. Now watch this. Removing the single point of failure. European Central Bank is at the vanguard of this group. Prior to 2023, European Central Bank was in the same bucket as Canada, relying entirely on SwiftNet to settle domestic transactions. If you think about it, are they going to look at Quant Network with QuantNet to get a better job done when it comes to their digital euro? Well, yeah, because Quant Network is literally building the digital euro along with Ripple and Hedera as shown in documents and our deep dives with all receipts provided. With its upgraded T2 system, Europe doesn't go quite as far as the Fed's model, which is to build its own bespoke messaging network. Rather, European banks now have the option of either sending a message to T2 using SwiftNet, or they can use, boom, boil it, mash it, stick it in a stew, SIANet. And again, we established the whole thing of SIANet and Quant, a competing network owned by Nexi, publicly traded corporation. SIANet stands for Società Interbancaria per Informazione. I'm not pronouncing it right. A network that originally connected Italian banks, but now has gone pan-European. My goodness, look more into this for yourself. What a find from John Paul Koenig. All right, got to get more into, again, why this all matters, because again, pound it home, SIA partners with the Quant Network. That's so big. And as we also see here, just reported today, a few hours ago, look how this all came together. Look how this all came together. XRP gears up because, like it says, Swift GPI and R3 recorded test highlights XRP. This is from coinpaper.com. And again, remember how we mentioned that Swift and basically the Swift GPI, again, back to the whole thing of XRP, because Ripple's part of that steering committee. Okay, and like it says here, XRP showing early signs of bullish momentum with the potential to push towards the 230 region, according to on-chain metrics. And more importantly, like it says here, jumping down to it actually, the accumulation phase aligning with broader market trends, signaling traders are positioning for potential upside. The heavy supply zones pose a risk of rejection, making the possibility of a breakout. Now, some people agree with this or not, but whatever the case be, don't forget, this kind of adds up because, again, the whole thing of what? Swift, GPI, R3 Corda, and again, XRP. All right, now enter in what? Temenos leads the way in CBDC innovation with R3, okay? Temenos prepares for digital currency future, successfully integrating its banking platform with multiple DLT-based CBDC tech stacks. Think about those tech stacks. And why point this out? Well, shout out to Rue Black, myself. We did some outlines in the past, dating all the way back, I think, 2023, about the Fednow showcase provider of Temenos, which is crucial. Okay, and why point that out? Well, basically speaking, again, even like with things like this, here's an unlisted video of Temenos USA Fednow Service Provider Showcase. In the transcript, we see at this particular part, we see how they point out that the Fednow initiative is a huge opportunity to engage with more institutions within the U.S. market. What are they doing with the Fednow? Well, basically, they're recognizing the functionality that's being requested by the Fed, and on top of that, they have a lot of things they're going to manage the specifics of the Fednow and apply it to their platform. I know I didn't play the video, but I'm trying to go to fast track through this. And like they point out, on top of that, they're adding this whole thing with Fednow rules and Fednow processing on top of building blocks. And again, this part right here, let me go down to it, using our instant payment framework. That's crucial, right? And again, why point this stuff out? Well, shout out to Smoke. He points this out because Temenos highlights who? They highlight the Ripple protocol right here in the pamphlet. Blockchain technologies like the Ripple protocol enable the creation of lower cost system that banks need to compete. And more importantly, again, from Temenos, and again, does it have anything to do with Swift? Like they point out, Swift have announced that 73 banks worldwide have now joined the Global Payments Innovation Initiative, the GPI, designed to improve cross-border payments experience. Recent banks to join the initiative include Alpha Bank, Axis Bank, a whole bunch of these, right? And that's also worth pointing out. And even the US Bank. All right, watch this. There's a little bit more about this. Collaboration at the core. And like it says here in the pamphlet, a good example can be found within Southeast Asia, where some small banks, which have operations in multiple entities, are already undertaking cross-border RTS through the blockchain using Ripple infrastructure. Again, using Ripple infrastructure. How more blatant does it need to be? And does it mention anything about R3? It does at the very bottom. Like it says, R3, blockchain technology company that leads a consortium of financial companies. So again, you can have an idea of how this all comes together. Does it mention Ripple again on another particular pamphlet? It does. Access to the infrastructure, access to opportunity. Back in May, at least at that time, Blue Zell Networks, I've shown a video about this, so that's Rue. A payments platform leveraging Ripple infrastructure became available through the Temenos marketplace. Again, Temenos with Fednow. You put two and two together in regard to Temenos, Fednow, Ripple with XRP, Fednow, and so on. demonstrate the ease which RTS systems can integrate and run on established yet agile core. Maybe you wonder, well, what the heck is Fednow waiting for? They're waiting for full regulations. That way it's trusted. Again, things have to be trusted, future-proof, and provide value. Well, the value is already there. Now it's just getting like laws passed and so on. The other area I want to jump into is banking systems. This particular model, Pavel Bain, CEO of Blue Zell, recounts that a bank teller performed a transaction in real time by simply keying in the appropriate information to send Canadian dollars to another bank where the recipient was expecting EUR, adding that the transaction, foreign exchange, and settlement all happened in seconds over the blockchain and all ledgers were updated concurrently. Does this not match up? Of course it matches up. That's worth sharing, right? Absolutely is. All right, the final things to get into, let's pull this up as well. Getting ready, according to this pamphlet, it says here specifically, 60% of banks interviewed by Deloitte said that international money transfers were their main focus from a blockchain perspective. And we have heard that benefiting from this market through infrastructures using Ripple by working with agile partners really can be a reality. Again, using Ripple, okay? That is so important. And last but not least, let's take you over to this. Let's share this. Temenos Fednow Processing Hub Gateway. You see Fednow, plain as day. You see Temenos. We jump more into it. You see here specifically from this clipping as well. The adoption of anything related to Ripple seems to be endless. Excuse me, let's highlight that again. Today, Arab Tunisian Bank with over 130 branches and 1,300 employees has indicated that they are leveraging Temenos T24, transacting software utilizing Ripple's agnostic ledger technology and used by over 700 banks across the globe. Okay, so I mean, that is also worth pointing out. Last but not least, because there's always going to be, let's be honest, some yahoos going to say, it didn't mention XRP, I only said Ripple. I always get those type of guys all the time. Drives me crazy sometimes, to be honest. But I want to address that real quick, because in this thing with Temenos, you will see where it says specifically XRP. And let's pull this up for just a brief moment, because it is crucial to basically share this, right? Let's get into that. So let's pull this up. So what we have is this little brief interview. I just fast forward to this key area. Let's listen to this. Here we go.
Connecting to the T24, then the Blue Zell technology is tapping into the T24, which will talk to the Ripple network, which is a Ripple protocol blockchain, and send money overseas. So let's do a demo. Here I am, Coast Capital Bank, and I'm the teller. John comes to me and says, hey, I want to send some money. Let's see, need some Canadian. I put in the account number for Coast Capital. There we go. And put in CAD account. We're going to send it to our European partner. Let's just say it's Nordea. Credit account EUR. And I'm going to pick a random dollar figure of 78 euros that he needs. So just like this. This is what the teller sees through T24. Let's look at the deal. Everything's there. I got the rate that came up. Now the rate that comes up is what the Ripple protocol will come back with from the market makers. It's an efficient path finding algorithm. I validate the deal, and now you saw the transaction happen, complete. So this is what's happened on the bank side right now. So let's recap. Blue Zell, the T24 stack at Coast Capital, talked to Blue Zell, went to the Ripple protocol, the blockchain, found an efficient rate of going from Canadian dollars to euro, and said, okay, let's finish that transaction. So all the messaging is done behind the scenes in real time, and then the transaction will happen over the blockchain. So here we go. I'm going now. Here's the actual blockchain ledger for Coast Capital. And there you see right there, 78 euros got instantly transacted. Where before took 2 weeks, took seconds. Here's all the authentication that you see behind it, the encryption, the hash key, the ledger, all these nerd words that you see or have heard about, that's where it is. Now I took that private hash, I'm taking it to the transaction page. On the left, you're gonna see real live transactions happening over the blockchain right now being settled. I enter our hash key, which once again is private to Coast Capital. And here you see all the information that was related with that transaction. You saw 6 nodes, 6 ledgers automatically get updated at the same time. So once again, a transaction that took 2 weeks.
And how many times do you see here in the transactions it says XRP? Yet people want to say, no, that's just Ripple. No, it says XRP. It says it constantly, over and over.
Or 3 days even, took seconds.
So to me, Mike, yeah, there you have it. Last but not least, even Stellar. Look at this. Integration into Temenos opens up 1,600 banks and credit unions. Again, this is from Temenos, right? From their website. integrate into Temenos opens 1,600 banks and credit unions to the Stellar blockchain. So even Stellar part of that mix. So you could basically say Stellar's role in connection to Fednow once again. I'm telling you, people are still complaining about this stuff. It is what it is. You can lead a horse to water. But for me, I'm going to be prepared. I am. And if anything, recognizing the ones that I have not hit my goals on, maybe you do as well, and say to yourself, what a blessing in disguise if you haven't hit your goals, because this is an inevitable time bomb. It has to be. You know, again, all the things had to happen, like the mandates and so on. Maybe the price doesn't reflect that yet. But I think, if anything, again, the regulations, you don't just develop these technologies and have them with these huge connections and nothing gets utilized and so on. It doesn't work that way. Again, investigate more about internet protocols dating back early 90s, late 90s. Again, going from Web 1 to Web 2. We're not in Web 3. People keep telling you that we're in Web 3. We're not in Web 3. We're trying to enable Web 3. In reality, we're like in Web 2.6, 2.7. But we will get there. And I think, if anything, that'll be the biggest generational shift of all time, where, my gosh, generational wealth is made. So I know this is quite the deep dive. It is what I do. If you notice, I speed it up on the playback is to kind of cut down on some of the minutes. A little cheat code, if that bothers you, you can just go to the gear and you can adjust that to be maybe a little bit slower for whatever needs you have and so on. But I'm trying not to put out videos that are like, hour and 20 minutes long and so on. But anyway, went the distance with this one. Do me a solid if you really appreciated the coverage and you stay the course, and type in this key comment into the comments, and that is everything else. As in, SWIFT unofficially chose Quant over everything else, because clearly in the orchestration, the research, it looks like they did, but they're not coming out and really saying that. And I know, and again, I understand what Chainlink's role plays. I'm not oblivious to it. Anyway, again, that helps me out. Lets me know if you listen to the entire outline. So the saying goes, know what you have, know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD 110%. The Lord Jesus bless you all. We'll see you guys on the next one. Over and out.